This video will make you confident. I'm Antia Boyd with Magnetize Your Man, and together with my husband, we've been helping thousands of successful women all over the world for the last 20 years combined to get a committed, connected, and long term relationship that they desire fast. So, in this video, you will learn what to do internally, what to break through so that you can feel confident, so that you can receive men that cherish you, that desire you, that pursue you, and that protect you. So let's go ahead and dive right in. Number 5 is what I call stop comparing jitis. Now, is there always going to be someone who's smarter than you, more beautiful than you, more talented than you, more creative than you? Of course. However, successful women know that it's about the art of self focus that gets you the happiness. Look, what happens is, of course, on the opposite side, it always looks like the grass is greener. However, you know why the grass is greener? Because the grass has been watered. So I'm here to suggest to you that you do the same. So let's go ahead and actually talk about what does it look like to water your own grass, right? How to actually nurture your own self-confidence and self-esteem. So, number one, when you notice that you compare yourself to someone, here's actually someone that you learn, something that you learn when you step into the work of projection because you spot it, you got it. The reason you love somebody's talent, or you love somebody's humor, or you love somebody's success, or you love somebody's looks is because you have access to that inside of yourself. Now, of course, you may find yourself laughing right now because you say, well, Antje, that is certainly not true. I don't have that education that that woman has. I don't have that wonderful childhood, that upbringing. I don't have men knocking in, standing in line, knocking down the door, and so on. However, you spot it, you got it, right? You can't recognize something in someone else that you don't have inside of yourself. Now, what of course happened most likely that you spent decades lying to yourself and saying that you're not worthy, or that you have to put everyone else first, or that your voice doesn't matter, or that you don't have anything important to say, or that there's no point to pretty yourself up, so to say, because your sister was the one who was the homecoming queen. Or maybe you had so many siblings that you were invisible and you felt easily replaceable because your parents wouldn't even notice if you were there or not, right? Or maybe you even experienced abandonment or neglect or even abuse in your childhood. But what I always say, seek and you will find. So whatever you focus on expands, which means if you actually say, you know what, I'm looking at where am I this person, right? Where am I successful? Where am I beautiful? And how can I be even more aware of all the opportunities that are already around me that help me to nourish my self-esteem, or help me to nourish my talent, or help me to nourish my beauty or my intelligence, or whatever you project onto the other person. So let me know how that goes below. I'm very, very curious because when I stopped comparing jitis, and of course, I'm not perfect, nobody's perfect. Of course, it still happens occasionally. But when I realized, look, everybody does the best they can, right? And the other piece also is whatever you project onto the other person is not the be all end all. There's oftentimes a second story to that you don't see because the other person either doesn't want you to see what they struggle with, or you simply don't take the time to actually see that they have interpersonal challenges, or maybe they have health issues that are maybe not as visible, or fill in the blank. Don't forget, everyone has something. Number 4 is break through unconscious ancestral agreements. Now, have you ever experienced that you hit a certain ceiling? It could be a certain pleasure ceiling, right? Like maybe you fill yourself up with a beautiful weekend, with girlfriends, maybe with your kids, like maybe with your favorite man. And then you do something to sabotage it, or out of the sudden you become quote unquote a bitch, or out of the sudden you become moody, right? Or maybe financially you have certain ceilings. And every time when you hit a certain amount of money, you kind of start to act funny, or you start to feel insecure, or something happens, maybe you get sick. That is because you have unconscious ancestral agreements. Now, what does that mean? So you can Google, of course, family tree. And what you're going to see is that you can actually create a tree, a family tree with your ancestors, with your great parents, your great grandparents, and you can actually track patterns. So you can see, how did that deal with love? Who loved who more? Who got abandoned for love because of what, right? Or money. What was the relationship there? And you can oftentimes see that there is agreements. There's lots of agreements around poverty, or around being single, around being, I had like one wonderful woman in my program, by the way. She's now engaged. Um, and they had this agreement to be invisible, right? It's not safe to be seen. So also looking at that as well, right? Because, well, how confident could you possibly be if you don't feel safe to be seen? Think about it this way, right? When you don't feel safe to be seen, do you speak up? Most likely not. Do you express your desire, or do you express your opinion? Or maybe do you step into the spotlight? Maybe that's necessary if you want to follow your purpose, your passion, your path, right? So maybe it takes something to step into that leadership, right? But you can't do that because you don't feel safe to be seen, or you're afraid to get smushed, or you're afraid, maybe you had a narcissistic parent, right? And you actually learned, oh, if I'm being seen, that means it's not safe, because I'm going to be made fun of. I'm going to be littled. I'm going to be potentially be even punished or attacked. This happens all the time. So you're definitely not alone with that. So now, how can you actually break through those unconscious ancestral agreements, right? And one is by actually understanding, wait a minute, this belief, right? This life, this decision never belonged to me. This pain never belonged to me. Maybe you decided, I'm going to struggle too because my mom struggled, my dad struggled. So then I'm not certainly going to be all happy and self-expressed, right? Like, of course, I'm not going to make them look bad. And so therefore, I'm going to be poor too, right? Or I'm going to, struggle in life too. And I'm also not going to have a happy marriage, or I'm also going to have health challenges because in my ancestry, everyone had health challenges. So I'm not going to be the one who's like super healthy and is full of vitality and full of life, right? I'm also going to make sure that I also have my challenges as well, right? So really say, this never belonged to me. This was never mine to carry. So repeat after me. This does not belong to me. And you hand it over to your mom, to your dad, or this was never mine to carry, right? Because, of course, talking about potentially our ancestors coming out of war, all those things like traumatic experiences. But again, this was never mine to carry, right? Yes, this was yours to carry. Thank you so much for going through this. So I don't have to go through this. So I have the life that I have, and I can actually live the life to the fullest. So try that out and let me know. Now, if you have challenges with that, take our free Magnetize Your Man quiz to get that loving long-term relationship that you desire fast. The link is in the description below. And of course, you learn more about like how to step into your true self-confidence, which, by the way, is intrinsic. Or you can simply also hop on over to Magnetize Your Man. Number 3, heal your guilt shields. Now, what are guilt shields? When we experience guilt, which also means we feel like we did something wrong, right? So maybe you stole the cookie from the cookie jar. Maybe you were a troublemaker when you were little, and but then maybe your guilt shield was denial, right? I don't have a cookie. I didn't hide it. I didn't, right? Why? Because it wasn't safe. And it was obviously very uncomfortable to admit I did something wrong, and I kind of knew I was not supposed to take the cookie from the cookie jar, but I was so motivated internally. I wanted to have this cookie that I went for it, right? Like I said, usually no kid ever, right? And so usually what happens is we have three guilt shields, right? So either you deny, like I just talked about it, or you completely collapse and you over apologize, right? Oh my God, I'm the most horrible person. You're so right. I did the wrong thing. Oh my God, right? And then unfortunately, if you do that, for example, then a lot of times you become found food for a narcissist or a man or a person in general, right? I also have clients um, tell me all the time how like friends or co-workers, right, just have sort of this narcissistic traits or controlling traits as well. So you're going to attract that, right? Because they can sense that you have that insecurity inside of yourself and that you actually respond to guilt tripping attempts, right? So if they can gaslight you and you are going to be manipulated and you are going to eat out of their hand and do whatever they want you to do, right? And then, of course, guilt shield number 3 is attack. So somebody says, well, you didn't do a great job today, right? Or did you call this person? Or did you, whatever it is. And you say, well, what about you? You're also not Mr. Perfect or Mrs. Perfect, or, that's attacking. Now, in all three cases, actually there's an insecurity inside, right? Actually, there's a discomfort inside, right? There's a deep tension inside. And when you this when you basically what's like you kind of like try to get away with it basically, right? You're covering up the guilt, the guilt. But other people can feel it. You actually lose connection. You also lose trust. And the reason why that's important is because that's why you attract people into your life, men, of course, as well as people that are not trustworthy, right? So either they're outright dishonest or maybe they collapse into their victim mentality. And what that looks like, for example, when somebody collapses into their victim, it's like, oh, I don't know what to do better. I'm doing the best I can. And, when I didn't grow up in a great household and, what I mean? I don't have a college degree, right? And and I already have my, the week is so tough, and I have 5 kids, and so they're constantly sort of the victim, right? It's always, they didn't do anything wrong, and of course, that leads to further distrust and disconnection. And then because of that, you can either attract outright narcissistic behavior or also emotionally unavailable and deflective behavior from other people, which of course is the very, very frustrating, right? Because you want those people to own up to what they did, right? Even at work or family or friends or whichever case it will be. So, what I recommend instead is actually saying, okay, so let's say I feel guilty, right? Let's say somebody would say something and I feel guilty. I'm like, oh, well, I did something wrong. And I just some the situation, something with my husband where I realized, oh, I did something wrong. I messed up, right? And it's like, okay, I'm breathing into, okay, I'm safe, right? I'm still safe. You're still safe. Everyone makes mistakes, right? And it's really saying, you know what? I apologize. And not like, oh my God, I'm the worst, whatever, right? Like, I own it. I apologize. I acknowledge that that I made a mistake. I made a mistake. I underestimated something, overestimated something, didn't check something, whatever the case may be, right? Because remember, girlfriend, we delete, we distort, and we generalize reality based on our unconscious expectations. So there's always going to be something that gets in the way of you showing up perfectly and always present and always having it all together. Number 2, this will make you so confident when you stop this dysfunctional pattern of codependency. And look, I'm the first one to admit here that I was fully in that, of course, with my mom, who had highly narcissistic traits, right? As well as with my dad as well. And the codependent tendencies really starts when you don't get your needs met as a child because you think, okay, if I make mom happy, if I make dad happy, then I'll be happy, right? But if they're not happy, then I can't be happy. This is also the case, by the way, if you have like alcoholic parents, like in general, any kind of like substance abuse, parents, right? Codependency, entanglement, enmeshment, right? It's just really unhealthy. And then it goes also into you having sort of this more anxiously attached nervous system, right? And the reason why is because you like it feels you almost don't give yourself that right to feel self-confident, to feel happy, to feel alive, right? To feel self-expressed, to feel successful if the other person is not, right? And that's of course because you're too other focused. So again, in order to feel that codependency, I invite you to focus on yourself, right? And so how do I say that? Women come to me and say, "Well, Antje, but I am naturally loving. I'm naturally a people pleaser. I'm naturally a caretaker. I'm naturally." Okay, that's all great, girlfriend. What I'm saying here is do the same for yourself as well, right? You can still be loving and compassionate and people pleasing, but just be as self-pleasing to yourself as well, right? Because otherwise, it's not authentic. Automatically, if you don't do it to yourself, then you have to do it because you have to hope that you get. Does that make sense? If you don't give to yourself, somebody has to give to you. And so that's how a lot of women start to break through the codependent pattern because they realize, wait a minute, that's not even authentic. I'm manipulating a person into liking me or into, like approving of me or into respecting me, right? But I'm actually not being outright honest with them. I'm not making an outright honest request. So interdependence is the new word for you. You can write that down, interdependence, right? Where you focus on yourself. You also focus on the other person too, of course. However, you also check in with yourself. How do I feel? How does my body feel? Do I agree with this person, with this coworker, obviously with the man? Do I agree with my sibling or my family member, or my neighbor, or whatever the case may be, right? And really understanding that there's a boundary, right? Just because somebody's saying something, you don't have to take that. You don't have to accept that, right? And how do you do that? I'm glad you asked. Number one, make the unknown your friend, right? Because a lot of people, the reason why they can't break through the codependence and why they can't break through the guilt is because they're afraid of the unknown, the uncertainty. They don't know, what does the other person think? What is the other person going to do next? When is the other shoe going to drop? When is the bomb going to explode? Like if you were imagine you walk on eggshells or you walk on a minefield, right? And so you have this unconscious expectation all the time, something bad is going to happen. But that means you don't make the unknown your friend, you make the unknown your enemy because you're saying as soon as the unknown happens, which has to happen, right? If you create a new trait, right? A new behavioral pattern, a new anything, right? Like somewhere you move somewhere new, you start a new relationship, you start a new job. Is there going to be an unknown aspect to it? 100%. You don't know your new team, right? Or you don't know the new territory. Let's say you own your own company, or maybe you're a lawyer and you have like a new kind of a lawsuit, or you started to date a new kind of man because you were always dating emotionally unavailable men. All of a sudden, you're dating a man who's totally secure. That's the unknown. And then what happens is your nervous system gets short-term dysregulated. Now, what does that mean? That means you feel like a little anxious, a little nervous, a little imbalanced, a little off balance, could be a little insecure too, right? But it doesn't mean that that's a be all end all to run away from that, but to actually say, oh, okay, that makes sense because I'm learning to stabilize myself at that new level. at that new ceiling, right? When I break through a glass ceiling, let's say, financially speaking, or in a career work speaking, like, of course, it's going to be new territory for me because now I have to lay out a new path, right? Now I need to lay out a new map for myself. So I hope that makes sense for you. Make the unknown your friend and let me know below how this will help you to become more confident and to express yourself and set the boundaries and love yourself. Lots of love, ladies, and I will talk to you in the next video. Take care. Bye bye.